Moises Caicedo is a flop. That's a narrative that's perpetuated the Premier League throughout this season at Chelsea after his £115 million move. And I'm here to tell you, that's nonsense. Are you mental? I'm not trying to insult your intelligence or anything here, but you may be entitled to compensation from a head injury at work. That's the levels we're talking here, because you cannot have been watching the same player and have that opinion and maintain that opinion, unless you haven't been watching. That is quite literally it. Or you're literally just watching through a lens of, oh, he's 115, that means he should be... I get it. Big feet equals they should be the most spectacular player in the world. It should be Neymar. But that's just the market, all right? Get used to it. Use your eyes. Watch this player. And you cannot tell me that's a flop. You can't tell me that's a flop. Genuinely, you can't be watching this player, especially for the last 6 months, and your eyes haven't adjusted yet. Open them up. In fact, he's been one of the best midfielders in the Premier League the last few months. That's how obvious it is to anyone watching. I'm not taking the piss. Again, not trying to insult your intelligence, guys. That is the player that's been playing right now. That's who you're watching. And it's not just because he's scoring goals from Jupiter. That's not the reason. Because it's not about goals. It's about just watch the game with your eyes. Watch the performance, right? You know, look at the ball. Follow the ball. Follow the Caicedo. Don't follow the narratives of people who haven't watched. Do not do that. Just watch for yourselves. And if you watch for yourselves, you're going to be on this side, all right? You're going to be on the side that doesn't look silly in the future, going around chucking words like flop at players that aren't flops, all right? It's easy to get carried away. It's very easy. So I'm going to be breaking down this video for all of you why this player is not a flop. I mean, a lot of it is going to be opinion based, but you can trust my opinion, right? I promise. I promise you can trust my opinion. I'm a doctor, not a Chelsea doctor that gets everyone injured either. People get caught up in fees, and there are some players that don't justify them in the slightest, but this is someone that's starting to show why Chelsea paid the big bucks. And this isn't even from a place of strictly bias. We've had a lot of flops for a lot of money in the past. This guy doesn't look like he's going to be one of them. It's not rocket science, okay? It's not rocket science that we're rocketing up the league and him being in incredible form for a consistent period now. It's not rocket science. We're starting to not look just like Parma FC. There's more parts that are shining, and he is one of them. And even some of your favourites that might have been propped throughout the season because their teams were better, he might be better than them. Caicedo started the season not at his best. It took him a while to settle into this Chelsea side, as it did many, as it did the manager, as it did the entirety of the squad. Injury ravaged throughout the season, Chelsea didn't really find their feet until the last month of the season, it could be argued, despite showing glimpses and moments throughout. Now, for the first half of the season, Moises Caicedo was guilty of that. He was someone that showed those glimpses, playing very well in games such as Arsenal at home, in fact. Him and Enzo Fernandez did a complete number on Arsenal before Sanchez gave the ball away and we threw the result away as a result. And he was guilty of having shockers. His debut at West Ham, it didn't exactly go well. And the reason for this narrative being so loud is down to two things. And those are people are watching the price tag and not the player, or they are not watching the player. Because for the last 4 or 5 months of this season, Moises Caicedo has been very good and only getting better. Arguably looking even better than he did at Brighton, for which Brighton commanded 115 million. In fact, getting Liverpool to bid 110 million. The 100 was what they were looking for. Liverpool were willing to go over that. A club that notoriously does not spend frivolously for fun, but it pushed Chelsea to get their man for 115 million pounds, the British transfer record. And as a result, people are watching going, what's all the hype? What's this 115 million pound player? And they're not just watching the player that's just a very good player, particularly as the season's gone on. And equally, like I said, I don't blame people for not really watching us. It's not exactly like we're fighting for a title or we're battling relegation. We've been pretty mid-table and then pushed for Europe at the end. We're not exactly the club that everyone wants to watch, despite the fact that we've had a number of entertaining games throughout the season. 4-4s against City, in which Caicedo played very well. Or the United game, quite recently, that he didn't so much. But that feels more of an anomaly in Caicedo's last few months, because it's someone that's found their feet and is improving our build-up play as a result, is improving our ability to break up play as a result, even managing to impact goals at this point, not just with yesterday, a potential goal of the season contender scoring from the halfway line, but even the Forest game the previous week. You had him pinging that ball out to Reece James before he set up the winning goal. Caicedo is managing to start to pull strings in midfield. Now again, there may be lazy analysis in terms of, is that because there's no Enzo? Should we go for the other £100 million midfielder? And I get it, because price tags equal flop, whatever. But in my eyes, it's something more that Poch has worked on in bringing Cucurella into midfield, in inverting. It's been a complete game changer for Chelsea and made us look like far stronger a side that's very capable of putting up consistent results, as shown by the last 5 wins in a row towards the end of the season. It's added that extra body in midfield and only helps him in terms of the amount of ground that he does cover and his ability to now go forward with the knowledge that someone's just sitting behind him. Caicedo has started to excel, and it's exciting as a Chelsea fan, not just because of Caicedo, because there are a number of players in Noni Madueke or Palmer, obviously, who's been a constant throughout, that are finding their feet very much so, and you're excited to see the coming years in how they improve due to their age. But Caicedo is someone that he can really be the glue in this Chelsea side. And the arguments will be whether you can live up to that price tag, but I'd argue for a first year for this £115 million player, and at the age he is of 22, this is someone that can really go on to be one of the best midfielders in the Premier League. And in that case, you'd argue for it. I don't think many people are questioning Declan Rice's price tag. And Declan Rice is 3 years older than Caicedo. Like 3 years ago at West Ham, I would argue Caicedo is better currently than Rice was. I don't think that's unfair to say. That's not me sitting there going one's better than the other right now. That's me saying if you look at age, I don't think that's an unfair argument. Chelsea have gone with that strategy of investing in the future, investing in these players they think are going to develop so much, and the fees can get confusing. I get it. I'm sat there sometimes watching thinking, is this £100 million player? But that's the market, and we're one of the roots of the market in doing so. But that's just the way it goes. You know, we got strikers who can't finish going for £85 million. Like, it's already gone. The horse is bolted. But this narrative being perpetuated is just interesting to me, because I'm not sure people realise where it comes from. I don't know if it's just a case of like, oh, okay, I haven't been watching him. I watched a couple games at the start of the season. He didn't look like he settled, so I've just run with it. I'm running with he's a flop. And that's fine. It's fair. It's what rivals do. Everyone's guilty of it. Or if it's a case of people watching the player and just being clouded by the price. Because quite literally for the last few months, he's been one of the best midfielders in the league. Now, I'm no stat shagger, but I know some people like their stats, so here's a little bit of a breakdown in terms of his numbers compared to someone like Rice. Now, as you can see, only interceptions does Declan Rice have over Caicedo in pure metrics anyway. With Caicedo excelling when it comes to through balls or his passing, it seems very evident that he had a superior season in that sense. Now, if you're watching these players, you'd argue Rice has had a better season, and I'm not here to argue that, by the way. This is me just sort of saying, you know, if you want your stats, there you go. Rice has been an immense presence for Arsenal this season and added actually some intangibles to that team in terms of leadership, something I'd say he has over Caicedo that you can't measure by stats. But this is more to actually showcase that Caicedo has been excelling at a number of things to a better extent than someone like Rice, yet one is labelled this massive flop and one is labelled a massive success. And if I'm honest, with similar fees, I'd say in 3-4 years, both teams are going to look at the signings as successes. There's not really anything to argue there for me. One just happens to be 3 years younger than the other in a lot younger team that's nowhere near as far along in their development. Declan Rice signed for a team that competed for the Premier League last season and has continued to compete for the Premier League this season. Moises Caicedo signed for a side that came 12th last year. Like, there was a lot of young players to bed in this season and develop for Chelsea, and they're only going to develop further. And I am excited in terms of what the ceiling is for this Chelsea side going forward in the future, because the more I've looked at it, especially the latter half of the season in terms of performance, we remind me of a Chelsea side in 12-13. We signed a lot of young players after winning the Champions League. Your Drogbas went, Toulouse, a number of others, but also we brought in the Hazards, the Oscars, etc. And those players had to bed in. And even though Rafa Benitez wasn't an enjoyable spell, the latter half of the season was starting to pick up. We were starting to see more glimpses. And I think you're seeing a lot more of those glimpses with Chelsea. And in the following season, Mourinho dubbed Chelsea the Little Horse. And I think Chelsea next season will be a little horse. Not someone who's going to win a league, probably not even challenge for it, but I think Chelsea will be in those Champions League spots, pushing maybe around third. And that's just completely dependent on how Arne Slot goes at Liverpool, because I don't know, if I'm honest. I'm not going to sit there and pretend to you I watch loads of Dutch football. I don't watch loads of Feyenoord. I don't know how good they're going to be. I know stylistically it's a bit of a match. That's supposedly why they've gone for him. But I don't know what their recruitment is. And I don't think Liverpool fans know either. I'm sure Liverpool fans had a very emotional day yesterday. And you don't know what the future beholds. This might be seen as the pinnacle. It's hard not to have... I imagine as a Liverpool fan, it's probably hard to even think it could get better than Klopp. Because you guys had it very good for a number of years. Yeah, okay, they maybe should have won more, could have won more, but they did win everything. And for that, it's hard to sit there and say, oh yeah, it's going to get better. Arsenal and City next season, at least, will remain as the top two, in my opinion. But I really think we can be pushing for this, because as I said in previous videos, the last 28 games, which is, okay, 3/4 of a Premier League season. Chelsea are 4th. So Chelsea are point-wise around that mark. And I don't see any reason why we wouldn't consolidate that further when we've got players who are even more used to each other, perhaps some more additions, and not even transfer additions. Just pure, let's have a bit more luck with injuries, please, lads, next season. Let's have Nkunku there a lot of it. Let's have Lavia there a lot of it. Let's have Reece James there for at least half of it. Chukwuemeka, Fofana, whoever. Chelsea will be better with those players than they would be without, as shown. But I do really feel like Caicedo is the one to watch going into next season. If I was a neutral sat back going, what am I watching when I'm watching Chelsea? I think the midfield pairing in general have been naturally, they're £200 million players. What are we seeing here? What are they getting from it? And I think you're only seeing that get better going forward. Now, Enzo will have to come back into the side. Will that change the dynamic? Will Chelsea be even better? Like, that's something that remains to be seen. But with Moises Caicedo, it certainly seems someone who's very settled at the moment. And I'm excited to see develop as a player because he has looked ridiculous in terms of how he dribbles with the ball, in terms of how he breaks up play, his passing. Like, he's really honing his craft. So yeah, I just thought it would be an interesting topic to kind of divulge into because I don't know what Caicedo people have been watching for the last few months. If they're to sit there and call him a flop or say he's bad or whatever, I just think you are aware he's been one of our best players. Like outside of Palmer, the last at least 3-4 months, he's probably up there. Put it that way. You might argue for like a Gusto or a Gallagher, but I'd say Caicedo. There's something about him where he's actually got this nastiness. Now, he didn't get a red card this season, but something to look for in the future as well, I think. Well, Moises Caicedo will get red cards because he does put in some naughty challenges. And as much as that might be frustrating at the time, I like that he has that bit of bite about him. It's something he can lean into. I like having Diego Costas. I like having John Terry. Yeah, okay, sometimes they might lose their head a little bit. Caicedo might put in a little bit too high of a challenge, might be a bit more ankle height, and then as a result, he's off. That will be something we'll have to deal with. But if you have a squad with the luxury of having a fully fit Enzo, Lavia, Ugachukwu, Conor Gallagher, you can deal with it. The problem is this season, we haven't had that squad. So it'll be interesting to see. What do people make of Caicedo? What did you make of the goal yesterday, actually? That was up there. I mean, I know a lot of people are going to go, Garnacho, already won goal of the season. That's in the bag. I thought Caicedo's was pretty brilliant as well, but I do understand it. And yeah, people that have been, maybe a rival fan that has been watching him for the last few months, like, what are your thoughts? Why do you think he's a flop? If you do think that, what is it that means you're maintaining that opinion? Is it just the price tag? Is it just the fact maybe you haven't quite watched our game every week like we're watching? I don't know. But equally, Chelsea fans, how excited are you about Moises Caicedo and about the fact he's actually settling? We have a lot of big players that we've signed over the years. They don't always hit the ground running, and sometimes they never find their feet. And this feels like someone who certainly is. Anyway, guys, make sure to hit like, hit subscribe. All that stuff helps me out a lot. I really appreciate it. I appreciate anyone that's been interacting with my videos recently, to be honest. It's been quite overwhelming in terms of making this step across to YouTube because it is a very different audience, but it's fun. It's fun because we're all football fans here, so we're all giving our opinions on stuff, so it doesn't matter if you disagree with me, agree with me, whatever. I appreciate it either way. But yeah, up the Chelsea. That was a lie. I haven't gone anywhere. I do have some additional news, and that is that I've got a video coming out on Thiago Silva focusing on his entire career. It's taken a lot of work. There's a lot of work gone into it, but I thought I'd let you guys know because if you made it to this far in the video, you're a real one anyway. So yeah, look forward to that.